Welcome into a football show. My name is Zach Lyons. He's Mike Herndon. Welcome into Football and Other F Words. I'm Zach Lyons. He's Mike Herndon. We're just gonna hit them both. We decided yesterday. Your schedule got a little wonky, so we were just like, well, we'll just do it in one show. So here's the plan. Braden likes to keep it like a tight hour and two. You know, like that's pretty much like I think he starts sweating if we go a little over. And me and Mike, we always go over. So
always
there is going to be like a split for Braden. We're the first hours for Braden, and then we have like a little special skit segment for the Football and Other F Words listeners at the end of the show. So make sure that you listen to the entire show if you're fans of both. If you're just fans of a football show and the succinct hour that we provide, we got it for you. It'll be on the podcast for you. But Football and Other F Words, a little special bonus, a little hidden peek behind the curtain here.
We're saving all the empty calories for the last
all the full good calories in the first hour, empty calories in the final hour. So that's how we're going to ride with it today. We're going to just kind of roll through a bunch of different things. We got all kinds of fun topics. We're talking Arden Key. We're talking fat people on the offensive line and defensive line. Mike has coined a genius term. Have you used the term that for Levis? Don't say it yet. For Levis on Twitter yet?
I don't think I have. No.
Okay, the debut of a new term and quite possibly the best thing you've ever came up with, because I mean, I saw what you came up with, the monsters of the Mitzway was the worst thing.
That was more a joke than a serious suggestion.
Now it's a joke. You were pretty hardcore defending the group chat. But anyway, we're also going to talk about pterodactyls, orcas, all kinds of different stuff. We're going to have a fun show planned for you guys today. But this show could not happen if it wasn't for Seekers Beverages, Bluegrass Beverages, and the Kingston Group. You've heard Bluegrass talked about over on Football and Other F Words. Been around since the 70s. It's like people say it's the sister store, but I feel like it's the Papa store. It's the Papa store to Seekers Beverages. It birthed. Maybe it's the Mama store because it birthed the Sinkers era down in East Nashville. So Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Seekers Beverages in East Nashville. If you're in East Nashville or the surrounding area that's close enough for an Uber driver to come deliver your liquor, they'll drive so you could drink. Just get on Uber Eats and look for Sinkers Beverages. And of course, join the in crowd for Sinkers Beverages and join the BOB, Best of Bluegrass, over at bluegrassbeverages.com. And then the Kingston Group for your home remodeling renovation needs. Just head to buildkg.com. Just give them a call. Like, if you have any kind of project and you just want some advice, want an estimate, they're okay with you shopping around. They're here to give you advice. They're your locally home and operated remodeling firm, Kingston Group, buildkg.com. We got some comments flowing. I mean, we're talking about like 9 comments already going. We're going to talk about Jamarco's a true menace. We got Music City GP weekend. Herndon for Hall of Fame. A blissful week without Braden. Man, sorry, Zach. That's from Zach Whitener. I'm putting it up. That I did not make this up, and it is not me. It's up on the screen for visual proof. Mike, speak on Skronk and Simmons. We'll get to all of that. Pretty Boy Lipschitz, who runs the Pretty Boy Kelly Twitter parody account.
Which I love.
Which, by the way, nobody in the media asked him about a question, which is driving me nuts. That you had him right there. And everybody's probably like, oh, how do you even frame it as a professional question? Blah, blah, blah. Guys, you guys just asked about people tackling Derrick Henry. You've asked about athletic rankings to players. That's not the least professional question you're ever going to ask. And here it is. Hey, we know players like to give nicknames to each other. Did anybody in the locker room catch wind that you were dubbed Pretty Boy Kelly? And how do you feel about that nickname? And is that what you're being called? There you go.
It would have been a great question. I will say that my guess is they didn't want to poke the Kuharski bear out there.
Listen, he pokes everybody else. I mean, if you guys need to go today on 102.5, PK is filling in for Robbie Stanley, who just had a child. Congratulations to him. But on 102.5, Robbie and Rex Road was PK in Rex Road this morning. And Stillman was on. And my God, did they get into it. and it starts at the 8 o'clock hour, if I'm not mistaken. It's their final hour, and they had to bleed it into 2 segments because it took so long. It is worth the watch. Go to YouTube. You got to watch it because you got to see Rexroad's reactions and comments on it. If you just listen to it, you're doing yourself an injustice. So you got to go listen to it. Okay. Speaking of media, speaking of love, speaking of pretty boys, I guess you could say, the media darling this year is Arden Key. Everybody loves Arden Key, and you can head to stackingtheinbox.com where they had the first Arden Key film review. And then if you want the ripoff, go to paulkarski.com. Arden Key is everywhere. Not only was your article out, and our article had been out for a couple of weeks, we like to stay ahead of the game and not be behind. Then you have John Glennon writing articles, A to Z writing articles. Everybody's loving some Arden Key. You've been at practice. You have seen Arden Key, I guess I would assume up close. I mean, at least close enough. The energy, the infectious, that was I think the day that you went was the day that he claimed that he had 7 sacks. So what is everybody's love and obsession with Arden Key? Which I
mean, honestly,
18, just saying.
Yeah. Honestly, it might have been more. It might have been more than 7 sacks that day that I was out there. It was incredible. He was everywhere. And I do think that there's, and I wrote about it in my piece, the energy, the trash talking, he is, and you see it when you see him, talk to the media or at the press conference and everything like that. I mean, the guy has like a huge smile, very infectious personality, easy to talk to. He's like, very personable guy. And then he is just all energy, like just a bundle of energy on the field. He's running around, he's talking trash, he's screaming and yelling. A guy on defense makes a play and he goes nuts. And it's good. I mean, because you need some guys like that on a team to get everybody going, especially as we're getting into August. We're more than a week into training camp now. And it's going to start to become like a little bit of a slog, especially for the veterans that have been through this a little bit before. You need a guy that kind of brings some juice and gets the guys going a little bit. And in the past, I think Taylor Lewan was that for the offense for a lot of years. Jeffrey Simmons has some of that to him, but I think Arden Key, honestly, is even he's like Jeffrey Simmons turned up to 10. Like it is really crazy to watch him out there, and it's impossible not to pay attention to him. And it's not the fact that we were paying attention to him because he's loud, but he's also making play after play after play out there. And it was super impressive. And I do think when I wrote about him, it was very early in the offseason. I think even before free agency opened, I previewed like the edge market. And he was the very first guy that I mentioned because I was like, if you want to find a buy low guy that could turn into something, like Arden Key is it. And the fact of the matter is they gave him more guaranteed money than they gave DeAndre Hopkins or any other free agent that they signed this whole offseason.
He's like one of the few that has a true multi-year deal, right? That's what's funny.
He's basically the only one that is contractually almost guaranteed to be here in 2024. So I think that's telling. I think I think Rand Carthon knew what he was as far as the energy in the building and things like that. And then, as I mentioned in the piece, his pass rush win rate, which is always very difficult to say out loud, has gone up every single year that he's been in the league. I think it started at it was pretty low. It's like 8. Let's see here. I've got it in front of me. All right, 9.1%.
The acronym's not any better, by the way. PRWR is kind of hard to get out there as well.
Tough. So 9.1% in 2018, 11.2% in 2019, 11.6% in 2020. And then he jumped up to 11.8% in 2021 when he went to the Niners. And then last year with the Jaguars, he jumped up to 13.8%. So increasing every year. And this last year was the biggest jump that he's had. So I think it's indicative of a guy that has talked this week about being in better shape, spending more time with his preparation. He learned, from Trent Williams, getting in the cold tub before practice to wake the body up and stuff like that. This is a guy that's taken football a lot more seriously throughout the course of his NFL career. And I think that's starting to pay dividends for him. in production. He's always had the talent. Like, he was a super talented guy. He was like, a lot of people thought he was going to be a first-round pick when he was a sophomore at LSU, and he had that
I
big season.
pounded the table for him back in 2018 because I thought that anybody that can get Arden Key, and this was really Vrabel's first year, right? So, like, we didn't really know what Vrabel was, but you kind of got the feeling that Vrabel would be able to was going to be a good coach. I felt if anybody in this league that comes from a defensive background can get Arden Key to reach his potential, it was Mike Vrabel. And I harped on it. And man, for like 2 years, I was like, man, this is really going to be bad. I don't know if this is going to turn out good. But you're talking about he's heading into his 6th season. He's just about, has he already turned 27?
Just turned 27, like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, so he just turned 27 in May. So, I mean, he's really at the peak of where it takes some edge rushers to get to anyway if you have a long career. Now, obviously, they have earlier and better production, but this doesn't mean that he can't be productive. And really, I'm all in on Arden Key. I have been for a while. He was one of the first guys I connected to the Titans because of Rank Carthon as a 49ers GM. It wasn't even because of a need. It was just because I felt like you bring in Azeez Al-Shaair and Arden Key, which they have a great relationship, and they both have great on-field, off-the-field personalities. It's not only helpful for just the slog of the offseason, Mike. In my mind, I'm thinking, if you would have had them during the losing streak last year or the slog of the actual regular season, that kind of infectious energy can help turn things around in the locker room and on the field. And the defense didn't really have a problem with that because, I mean, Jeffrey Simmons was pretty good. But these guys, you're right, they are both like a step above. You know, David Long, he was trying to get there. It just never really felt like he put it all together. It's like he was like 3/4 of the way there in terms of personality on the field.
Yeah, I think it's from a production standpoint, David Long had already arrived. I just think he, from a leadership standpoint, from being a loud vocal guy, I always felt like that was not his most comfortable role or position. And that's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be for everybody, but it is important to have some of those guys. And the Titans now, I think, seem to have a lot of them. And I think he's going to be interesting to watch because I do think he's going to line up all over the place. I think he's going to get a chance to play early downs, which he has not had the chance to throughout his career to this point, really since his rookie season with the Raiders. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Because, I mean, look, last year with Jacksonville, he had the highest run defense grade of his career. He graded out at 75.1, I believe, or something like that.
60 is average, by the way.
Yeah, 75.1 is a very, very good score from a run defense standpoint. Now, he wasn't asked to do it a ton. But when I watched the film and everything, the reps that I did see, he did a good job. I mean, I think he was using his length, and he was able to anchor against power. You know, there's a clip that I put in my article of him working against Tyler Smith, who is a very powerful tackle. Even if he was a rookie, certainly had the ability to move people in the run game, and Smith, jumps out to take a lick on Arden Key, and Arden Key just stiffs him right in his neck with the long arm and holds him right in there, turns the play back inside for an easy tackle for the linebacker. So stuff like that encourages me that I think he will be able to play a good, 3-down role, 3-down football for this team, which is what they need opposite Harold Landry, and obviously with Danico Autry also mixing in those edge spots, basically.
And this is a question for Pretty Boy Lipschitz on YouTube, is he the Autry replacement long term?
I kind of think he is, just from the fact of Autry's kind of got that inside-outside versatility. Now, Autry's a more powerful player than Key is, but Key's also a lot more athletic. I described him as sort of a blend between Harold Landry and Danico Autry, and the fact that he's athletic enough to play in space, but he also has some length and strength to be able to kick down and play inside. So I think it's there's a good chance that he probably is the Autry replacement from a long-term standpoint, in the fact that he can play inside or outside and brings that versatility and can kind of be a matchup nightmare for them. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys are kind of deployed together this year. But yeah, I'd imagine Autry's probably not back next year unless he just is, has a crazy season and they bring him back on like a 1 year.
If you played in a fantasy league that was stupid to have individual defensive players.
Oh God, I hate
that. How high would you draft Arden Key though?
So I have no idea because I don't know how the scoring works in those leagues because I avoid them like the plague because it's just way too much. It's way too much.
But he would be on your radar.
He would be because I think he's going to be productive. I think he's going to be in for probably 8+ sacks. I think this is going to be a good defensive front. I think that's going to give him more opportunities. I think the fact that Autry and Simmons are really good pickers and they're going to be able to run some, tight end or not tight end, tackle in stunts with him and be able to pick guys off and give him clear shots at the quarterback. I think he's going to have an opportunity to be really productive for this defense.
And maybe it's just because he's a blabbermouth or has a good personality, but I thought it was interesting the other day when he was when he was actually on the press conference, not just one of those videos from the sidelines, but he talks about with Harold Landry discussing if you're going to go high, I'm going to go low. If you're going to go low, I'm going to go high, discussing how to trap the quarterback essentially if they're both rushing at the same time or if one's setting the edge or whatever. And I that seems very common sense stuff. Like this is some of the stuff that's being said for the first time out loud, but it's stuff that we've always assumed.
Yeah.
But it also kind of shows, like, to me, that I'm kind of like this team feels like it's more of a team and not individuals. It feels like when Bud Dupree came onto the team or Jadeveon Clowney came on the team, it's just like Bud Dupree do Bud Dupree things. Harold Landry, it felt very isolated. Like, You're doing this, Harold Landry, you're doing this. It seems here there's a lot of crossover, and maybe this has more to do with positionless football. This has more to do with John Robinson walking around, twirling his whistle, being the practice Nazi that he was. But to me, it feels like there's a lot more collaboration among the players in the defense off the field or after a play. Did you get that sense?
Maybe. I think the Titans really, from a pass rush standpoint, have always really kind of put an emphasis on trapping the quarterback and collapsing the pocket. Like that is, to me, kind of one of the hallmarks of the Mike Vrabel era from a defensive standpoint is they don't want to just, because and I've talked about this before. You get one guy penetrating into the backfield who wins on his pass rush move. That guy can be avoided in the pocket by an elusive quarterback, which is more and more the standard in the NFL these days. But if you get, assuming you have no penetration from anyone else, but if you get multiple guys penetrating, or if you have one guy penetrating and then the rest of the guys are pushing their offensive linemen back and collapsing that pocket, making it tight to where the quarterback doesn't have room to move around and escape, that makes a huge difference in the ability to actually convert pressures into sacks, which I think is something that they have done pretty well in recent years. But I think Key definitely it seems to be a collaborative guy. I mean, the fact that he has a really good relationship with Alshire, and Alshire is going to be, it sounds like the play caller for the defense this year too, by the way, which is an indication of kind of how they view him as a piece to this team. But I think it's going to be a group that's going to be pretty tight knit, and it seems like the defense is way ahead of the offense in camp so far, which is not necessarily a surprise, but
it feels like we say that every year too. Like it kind of feels like every year we're saying that same thing because they're having to reset so many pieces year in and year out.
Yeah, well, especially this year with the offense being basically brand new around Tannehill and Henry for the most part. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this defense comes together.
How much, and this is from Trey Wynn, how much of it is a roster built based on analytics? I feel like Key, Simmons, Landry, and Autry is a skill set combo that will be a problem. Do you think how much of it, because we know that some analytics was there, but really they're now building out the analytics department and their models and perfecting. So how much of it do you think the analytics played into signing guys? It's almost liken it to Moneyball, right? Like cheaper guys that provide you a value that everybody else is kind of undervaluing or flying under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that it probably was used to some degree, just because I think Rand Carthon has shown already that he's very much an analytics driven GM, or someone who values that input into the process. Um, I think they probably, I think all 32 teams subscribe to PFF Ultimate or whatever it is, where they get all their
Didn't really
charting.
feel like the Titans do, but we'll see. I
Well,
mean, they probably do now.
yeah, but I mean, you look at a guy like Arden Key versus a guy like Bud Dupree is a good example, because Bud Dupree was an analytics nightmare. Like he was always a guy that his sack production those 2 years when he had the big sack numbers in Pittsburgh, that led to his big free agent contract, according to analytics, were mostly empty numbers. Right now, there were also some numbers that suggested that when he was on the field, the Pittsburgh defense performed at a much higher level. And I think that is a factor. Like that is a part of analytics as well. But from an individual standpoint, Bud Dupree never had high pass rush win rates. God, I've got to find a new term for that, because it is awful to say, and I'm really bad at it. But he was never good at that. He always had really low numbers, even if he had good sack production. And Key has kind of been the opposite. His sack numbers have never been huge. A lot of that's because he hasn't played a ton of snaps. Like he hasn't played a starter's complement of snaps either of the last 2 seasons. But his underlying metrics are pretty good. So he's got high win rates. He's got good pass rush productivity scores. So I certainly think there's a chance that we're seeing that transition happening now. But I think in a few years, we'll really be able to tell a lot more about what, Chad Brinker and Sarah Bailey and the analytics staff has been able to do, because I think they're just at the outset of really building out the proprietary stuff that they're going to build and maintain in-house, in addition to the stuff that they're subcontracting out to like S2 or PFF or whoever else they use.
And to be honest, I was looking at their staff page the other day, and it's just like Sarah Bailey, Chad Brinker, a guy that actually, like, I guess, turns the models into apps or computer programs that everybody can use, and then like a data monkey. And that is pretty much it. It's like still very small. So it's going to, I don't know. I'm learning R right now, and I don't know if they use R, Python, what they're using, but it's a very it's not labor intensive, but it's a very complicated thing until you like learn it all. So I kind of wonder, how quick can 4 people essentially build out everything that they need? So I wonder if they're still going through some growing pains right there. But who's not going through some growing pains? Our sponsors, BuildKG.com, the Kingston Group, Bluegrass Beverages, BluegrassBeverages.com, the Sinkers Beverages, SinkersBeverages.com. They've all been around for decades. So go and use these guys that have perfected their craft. These businesses have perfected their craft. Bluegrass the Sinkers will tell you what you tell them. Say, listen, I want some brown water. I want some fancy brown water. Bluegrass Sinkers Beverages have the staff that will point you in the right direction. And of course, the Kingston Group will point you in the right direction for all your construction needs. Let me tell you who's going in the wrong direction. And Arden Key is forcing them to go in the wrong direction, this defensive line, and that is the offensive line. And we are here at it seems like our regular screaming at each other, the great Hogmolly debate, part 50, where we disagree about the ceiling or the likelihood that this team can turn it around from the offensive line. There are 3 articles over at stackinginbox.com, 2 by me and 1 by Trajan Watkins, where I say it's time for a rebound from the offensive line and do a case study on it. And then Trey's talking about the lack of urgency at the Titans at right tackle. There's a lot of storylines revolving around this. Surprisingly enough, out of all the local media, PK is the most positive about the offensive line, and positive in a pretty positive manner about it. He's like, it's going to take time, blah, blah, blah. And he brings up a point, which he may have picked up from stackinginbox.com, because he made the point after I made the point, talking about how the scheme can mask the offensive line's deficiencies. So it will be a lot of this is going to be Tim Kelly and the pass catching weapons doing some heavy lifting for the boys up front. You hate this offensive line. You tweet about it incessantly. I'm sick of it. Pin it to your profile and just retweet it. You don't have to type out the same message every time, but you hate them. And that's okay. That's your opinion. It will ultimately be proven wrong. But what I hesitate to ask what your confidence level is, but why aren't you giving him the benefit of the doubt or a clean slate that Tim Kelly has been given?
I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt and a clean slate. I've never said that this is guaranteed to be a terrible offensive line this year. I'm just saying that none of these guys are proven. Like, none of them are proven commodities, which is a factual statement. Like, Andre Dillard has played 9 NFL games. Peter Skoronski's played 0. Aaron Brewer has, 2 starts at center in his NFL career. Brunskill's played a couple seasons, but was benched for a 4th-round pick last year. And the right tackle, we have no clue who it's going to be. So there are 0 proven commodities on this offensive line, which is what scares the crap out of me, especially when I went to camp on Friday and see Andre Dillard.
I knew. I was like, fucking Mike goes to the one camp that they're just going crazy over.
Andre Dillard got absolutely pummeled by Arden Key in that practice. And look, I think Arden Key's going to be really good. He's not going to be the best defensive end that Andre Dillard is asked to block this year. And if another defensive end has a day like Arden Key had on Friday against Dillard, it's going to be like Dennis Daly 2.0 for that game. I don't think that's going to happen every week. I'm not saying that he is Dennis Daly. I'm just saying it was bad on Friday when I was out there. And look, Brunskill getting pushed around by Jeffrey Simmons, we all kind of expected that to happen. That's something that, a lot of players are going to get pushed around by Jeffrey Simmons, including Quentin Nelson. So like, I'm not going to necessarily hold that completely against him. But again, it's a reminder that, when Jeffrey Simmons is running up and down the field screaming, it's too effing easy after like almost every snap that he's in the backfield immediately. It's just not a great sign for the offensive line as a whole, right?
So early.
I know. I'm not saying that this is it, that the book's closed. I'm just saying that this is what happened the day that I was out there. And it was concerning, especially as somebody who has some doubts about this offensive line to begin with. Like a lot of doubts. I have doubts about every single one of them. Like every single position on the offensive line, I have some level of doubt about their ability to play anything above like replacement level football. And they need somebody to be good on the offensive line, and they need all of them to at least be passable. And I just don't know, what it's going to be. And I've always said there's a situation where like Andre Dillard reaches his potential. He was a former 1st-round pick. He's extremely athletic. Like, I love the athleticism of Dillard. I think he's got some potential. Skoronski, I love the pick in that, I think he's going to be a good guard in the NFL. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl, all-pro kind of guy. Maybe not this year, but long-term, I think he will be. I have always liked Brewer at center. So, like, I feel like there is upside for all of these guys. Besides maybe, like, I think Brunskill kind of is what he is. And I think that's, like, replacement level, probably – if you stacked up the right guards in the NFL, Brunskill would probably be somewhere in the like bottom 10 to 12 as far as starters.
You're so wrong on that.
Oh, come on now. If Brunskill had signed with the Jaguars, you'd be like, who's this guy? Who's Brunskill?
I'd be upset. I'd be upset because I talked about Brunskill on the outset of this whole free agency thing. If I was some Joe Schmo in the group chat or something, but I talked about how I think that Daniel Brunskill would be a good replacement for Nate Davis, who, by the way, is already injured and has Bears fans in a panic on Twitter today. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, I saw that he missed practice.
Yeah.
But look, I think Nate Davis is very clearly a better player than Daniel Brunskill when healthy and on the field and trying, right? Like that, I think that is a definite truth. So he's one of the probably 20 right guards that I think is a better player than Daniel Brunskill currently in the NFL. So look, I mean, do you think he's going to be a Pro Bowler? Like, I mean, where are you putting him in the
I wouldn't put him a
NFL right guards?
I wouldn't put him a Pro Bowler, but I bet he's top 20. I mean, I don't know if if you're doing just right guards, I think he'd still be top 20. But like, I don't think you realize how bad the guards were for the Vikings. The Vikings were the worst, and they still somehow are ranked like in the middle of the pack of all these teams. It's ridiculous. Is there anything that the offensive line can do in the offseason before week 1 to give you any faith and make you go, you know what? Maybe I was a little mean on these little fellas.
I mean, I'm not saying, look, again, I'm not saying they're 100% going to be bad. I just think that there is a very real possibility that they are bad. And I think a lot of people seem to have this idea that, like, because they changed out all the parts, it's all fixed and it's all better and it's going to be much, much, much better this year. It could be much better. That's possible. That's one of the possible, like, the range of outcomes that I think are within the possibility is like, this offensive line does gel, and Skoronski's a instant hit. Dillard, reaches his potential. Brunskill's okay. Brewer's good, and they figure out right tackle, whatever happens over there. And that group's like top, maybe half, like maybe right at like the midway point of offensive lines, like in the 15-16 range. I think that's like within the realm of possibility. I think more likely is that they're somewhere in the like 20 to 26 range. And then I also think there's a pretty decent possibility that they're one of the worst offensive lines in the league again. I think if you looked at all the other offensive lines in the NFL, I don't think you would find a single one that has less proven talent than what the Titans do on it. And I know there's potential, there's all that, but there's just nothing proven, which to me, like, as somebody who's watched the Titans for a long time, I've gotten wrapped up in potential way too many times and seen it turn into nothing. Like Justin Hunter, Dorial Green-Beckham, I mean, Chance Warmack, all these guys that had potential to be good and then just were not good. And I just don't know that I'm willing to hang my hat on potential right now today. Now, if they start showing me something in training camp and preseason work and they start to look good and you're seeing, real steps taken, Andre Dillard starting to look like, he's getting it, it's clicking, then maybe we will feel a little bit better by week 1. But really, I think I'm going to need to see some games before we're really willing to consider that the offensive line is better than bad at this point.
Whew. Man, it's tough. It's tough out here for those guys. I mean, they're just out here trying to do their job, and you just won't let them do it.
It's not their fault that they haven't proven anything in the NFL. It just is what it is.
Oh man. Well, I will say this: it doesn't take much for an offensive line to look better than what it did last year. A part of that's going to be scheme. A part of that is going to be DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks getting open. And a part of that's probably going to be a tiny bit of an easier schedule than what they faced last year. But it's still a very front-loaded schedule, which is the worst. It's the worst time for the offensive line to have the front-loaded heavy schedule because they're going to look really bad. And I can already see that fans are going to be turning on them every chance that they get. And you're going to be like, oh, I told you so. I told you so. And then by the end of the year, they're going to be middle of the pack. And then I'll be like, I told you so. Just keep the faith, my friend.
Listen, I mean, first 4 weeks, they're going to have to play Cam Jordan, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, and Trey Hendrickson. All of those guys, I believe, will be lining up against Andre Dillard. So Andre Dillard needs to have it figured out by week 1.
Of course, you got to remember he hasn't played a lot. So right. I know that's a concern, but I feel like, when you're talking about what they're doing in practice, you have to remember who is practicing and who has gotten probably more practice reps in the last, 7 or 8 months versus who hasn't. I mean, Arden Key's obviously been practicing more and taking more meaningful reps over the last calendar year. Whereas, Andre Dillard's probably just getting his feet wet beneath him.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing to me too is, and this is if you want to look for a reason to believe that the offensive line could be better. I think the biggest thing, because I don't think Brunskill is going to be so bad that he cripples your entire offense. I just don't think he's going to be very good. But I don't even think that really matters. I think the thing that matters is you absolutely have to have Andre Dillard be good. because you cannot go into a season with 2 bad tackles. We saw what that looked like last year, and it is a death sentence for an offense because you are left with these choices. Either you leave one of your bad tackles alone on an island on third down against one of these awesome pass rushers. The NFL is loaded with pass rushers nowadays. Everyone has a good edge rusher. Either you leave one of these bad tackles alone on an island with those guys, or you're chipping and you're only able to send out like 3 guys into the pattern against what will likely be 7 defensive backs. So you're like outnumbered 2-1 in the secondary, just from a number standpoint, when you're only getting 3 guys out into the pattern. So, you're kind of screwed from a standpoint of pass protection. And that also affects early downs. That's why like the Titans have always had to rely so much on play action in their early down passing game is, hey, if you don't trust your tackles, that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do to be able to have any sort of passing attack. And if that just becomes repetitive, teams can look for that. Teams can find ways to take away kind of those pet play action attacks. And they did that to a large degree last year. So I don't think there's any hope that the right tackle situation is going to be good before week 7, or before, I guess, week 8, after the bye. So I think Dillard's got to be good. I think he's got to be good pretty early. And if he's not, if Dillard is bad, I think you're going to go through another season where you're going to have 2 bad tackles and you're going to see them having to keep guys in to protect on third downs, and you're going to have 3 guys running routes. And that, in that case, you better hope that that DeAndre Hopkins and Kyle Phillips are getting open and Treylon Burks are getting open quickly on third downs. But to me, Dillard is like the linchpin of the entire offense at this point. How he performs is paramount to their success.
All right, enough Hogmolly talk. I'm sick of it. We'll probably talk about it again next week.
Yeah.
But let's debut your new term for this new era of training camp. What's on the horizon? And so I have to ask you, and I'm asking the people in the chat, has the Levis-sance arrived? Because you think it has. You're calling it the Levis-sance. Will Levis, obviously, since I guess you could say the training wheels came off, maybe that's what he needed, was a little bit less overthinking and a little bit more instinctual, go play football kind of deal. But on Tuesday, they decided that they weren't going to do any scripts. They were going to treat it like a game situation. They prepared the night before like it was a game situation. And he seemed to thrive. I mean, he came out and is throwing touchdowns 3 in a row, which is kind of mind-boggling because you've never seen 3 back-to-back touchdown passes in a row. It's kind of insane.
And he did it 2 days in a row.
Yeah, he did it 2 days in a row. I mean, he's been really, really good. His favorite target is Reggie Roberson. He's done it versus the 3s. He's done it versus the 2s. He's looked better in both situations. And I have a comment from Mike Vrabel today that I thought was pretty interesting. But specifically, this was a topic that you wanted to talk about. So tell everybody why you believe the Levis-sance is here.
I think so. Malik Willis, obviously, he has improved. He has improved. I think he's better than he was this time last year. But I think Levis is already way, way beyond where Willis was this time last year. And I think Levis really he's in the process of passing Willis right now. I think we're at the very outset of this is where Levis ends up taking the job, probably in the next few weeks that rep count starts to balance out and then maybe even skews completely towards Levis getting the reps with the 2s and Willis being pushed down to the 3s. I think we're in the process of that happening. And I think Levis has been impressive from a standpoint of he's not making a ton of huge mistakes. The operation doesn't look bad when he's in. I remember last year, Malik Willis would go in the game and sometimes it looked like they couldn't get lined up right. And it just looked like nobody knew what they were doing on the offense at times. And to me, Levis has had none of that. He's been pretty clean operationally. He looks like he's getting the ball out pretty quickly. And obviously the accuracy has been pretty good. I mean, if you look at his numbers as a whole over camp that Jim Wyatt's been tracking, I think he's completing close to I think it's in the high 60s, which is what he was at Kentucky, a high 60s completion percentage kind of guy. If you look at Anthony Richardson, I think Anthony Richardson might be below 50% right now, just based on some of the practice reports I've seen out of Indy. But I think Levis is making his move now. And I think he's shown enough that I'm pretty convinced that he's at least an NFL, like, bottom level starter kind of quarterback right now. Like, I think you could put him on the field and be okay.
Would you rather have Will Levis or Desmond Ridder?
I think I'd rather have Levis. I'd rather have Levis. Yeah. And I do like Ridder. I'm still intrigued by Ridder.
Me and you are big Ridder guys and stuff, and so you are team Will Levis right now.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit of homerism?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't gotten to see Ridder up close, like at practice. I see the little clips that circulate from like Drake London and Bijan Robinson and everything that go around Twitter like everybody else, but I haven't gotten to obviously see him at practice or anything. I thought he was okay last year in the game situations that he got to play in. And I guess from what I've heard from Atlanta is that looks like a guy that's, that they're excited about at least. So I'm interested to see what Ridder looks like this year, but I think I'd rather have Levis. Levis just has a much bigger tool set. I mean, he's a bigger guy. He's got a bigger arm. His upside is way higher than Ridder's, in my opinion. And I think Ridder's ceiling is probably, and I think we talked about this last year. It's kind of like, Tannehill. Like, if he's Tannehill but could win in the playoffs, or if he's Tannehill but doesn't have the just mind-numbing interceptions every now and then. I think that's his ceiling. I think Levis's ceiling is higher than that. So I'd rather give me the high ceiling guy who's already showing signs that he belongs.
Very interesting. I thought that you may go with Desmond Ridder, but it's just very interesting. I mean, I can't say that I disagree technically. I just did think it was pretty interesting. So with the Levis-sance, we still have Malik Willis, in him. They're not battling, they're competing, I guess. I don't know. Said they don't want it to be combative, the competition. But I thought it was interesting about something that Malik Willis, or that something Mike Vrabel said about Malik Willis. And I want you to tell me if I'm reading too much into it, because we know Vrabel is a guy that carefully crafts what he says. He was asked about, is it nice to see, or how do you feel about the improvement that you have seen from Malik Willis compared to where he was last year? And he said, in terms of development, I don't like to really dwell on the past. I don't think the past is important. And we have talked on Football and Other F Words and a football show, how that if you're starting from the bottom, your improvement from way down at level 11 to 10 can still look like glaring improvement, even if it's just a couple levels jump. I think that's what Mike Vrabel is getting at. I think he's just saying, hold the phone. He's not quite there where he needs to be yet, but we do like what we've seen. But I don't want to compare it to last year, because then I couldn't say nice things about Malik Willis.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Willis is I think Willis has taken steps forward. And I think, they're not going to say anything bad about him right now either, right? I mean, I think Vrabel has gone out of his way to say some nice things where he didn't necessarily have to, which I always think, if you ask Vrabel a question point blank about a guy and he says something about him, I think that's one thing. When you ask him a general question and he goes and brings up a guy out of nowhere, I think that's a different thing. And he's done that with Willis a couple times. So I do think he really is. And let me also say that the media is sometimes a tool that a coach uses to pump up a guy that maybe he thinks needs some confidence, or maybe he, wants to reach that way and say some nice things, get a little bit of, see if maybe a little push with a positive message could help him. I think that's sometimes, a tool that is used by coaches. But, I think ultimately, I still think Malik is going to make this team at the end of the day, and they're going to end up keeping him around as the emergency third quarterback to have on game days. And then, possibly a backup for Levis next year or trade bait, So I think that's where we're headed with this thing. It's just going to be a slow road to get there. And they'll never admit any of those things, but I think that's where we're going to end up.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It just feels like that is the way that it's going to go. I will say this. I'm really liking what I hear about Will Levis. I kind of agree with you. The Levis-sance has arrived. I think he's done enough to show that if Ryan Tannehill were to go down, he's not going to be in over his head like a certain quarterback was last year.
Right.
And they may be able to do more with it. I hesitate because there was a discussion this morning. Again, we'll go back. This was actually Wednesday evening on. I always like to tune in for Jared versus Joe where they're arguing, and I think where we're at is like if you're gonna pose the question of ceiling and you don't want to put a realistic ceiling on it, then you probably don't need to have the discussion at all because you're going to have, because we've had this discussion, we're going to, ceiling just means like, oh, anything could happen.
Yeah.
But with Malik Willis waiting in the wings, Malik Willis is improving. I thought it was interesting that Jared last night said that his ceiling, Malik Willis's ceiling, and this is a discussion about ceilings, if Malik Willis reached his full potential, he still wouldn't be as good as Tyrod Taylor in the NFL. Oh. What do you think about that statement? Isn't that a ridiculous statement?
That's kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean, I was at least going to give him Jacoby Brissett, I mean, come on. No, I think Malik Willis's ceiling is probably higher than that. I mean, I guess it depends on what you believe to be a improvable trait. Like if you think that his pocket awareness, his ability to kind of read a defense and see downfield and stuff like that is just something that cannot be improved, I suppose that could end up being what his ceiling is, but I don't think that's true. I think that's stuff that you can improve on, and I think that's why Willis does still have a chance to become like a starting level quarterback at the NFL level at some point for some team. I don't think it'll end up being this team because I think Levis is going to be better than him, but I could see Willis being a starter for some team in the NFL at some point in his career.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that like that's what they went with. Is that like, or that's what he went with. But it's just terrible. Yeah. Okay. So we're nearing the end. We got a couple more people that we want to talk about before we get to the football and other efforts portion of this. Bluegrass Sinkers Beverages, the Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Go support these locally owned businesses. We got a pterodactyl on the rise. He's flapping his wings and he's rising from the ashes, almost like a pterodactyl phoenix. And that man is a guy that we both were pretty high on heading into last offseason, an undrafted free agent. And he's getting a lot of love from his position coach today. And you put out a tweet insinuating that he is fighting for that number one spot based on the defensive lineman's coach's words. And that man was the new kid on the block, Jaden Peavy. So I ask you, Mike, are you concerned about Tier Tart, or is Jaden Peavy just that good?
There's a lot of PV buzz coming out of the Titans world right now. As far as, I mean, it was even before training camp started that, there was reports that were trickling out there about, the Titans really like what PV's done this offseason. Shane Bowen talked about it. Terrell Williams has talked about it now. I think Mike Vrabel's talked about him. And they're all glowing in what they say about him. And look, PV's a guy that I was intrigued by last year because you just don't have that many like 6'5". I think he's like 309 but has like 35.5-inch arms, which is a rare arm length. I mean, I think his wingspan is over 7 feet. So he's built more like an NBA basketball player, but he also weighs 300 pounds and has, a lot of power to his game as well. Super talented guy, very intriguing skill set. And it seems like the light has come on. It sounds like he's dropped some weight compared to where he was last year. And to me, Terrell Williams, when he said, because I think the question was asked or it was posed as, you know, what does it mean for Jaden Peavy to get a chance to work behind guys like Tier Tart and Jeffrey Simmons? And he said his response was something along the lines of, I'm not saying he's working behind any of those guys, and he's got an opportunity to earn a role, and everything's going to be earned around here, which is a little bit of coach speak. But I also think they're playing him at nose tackle, and I don't know if maybe they're trying to maybe light a fire under Tier Tart's ass if they felt like he spent too much of his offseason worrying about his contract and all that stuff, and not being focused on getting ready for the season or what. And I'm not saying there's anything to be alarmed about Tier Tart right now, but they like Peavy a lot from what I can tell. And it'll be very, very interesting to see how reps are distributed. Cause I think I told you the day that I was out there at camp, I was like, holy crap, Peavy's out there early. Like he's working in basically with the starters at this point. And that was eye-opening to me because they are giving him reps as if he's not only going to be on the team, but he's going to be a big part of the rotation. So I think
Naquan Jones ain't making the team, right?
If
you're doing a final 53, you putting Naquan Jones on?
Probably as the fifth guy, yeah. Because I think it would be Simmons, Autry, and Autry really to me. So this is another thing. Autry has mostly been working with outside linebackers in the individual drills.
Right. He's like almost you have like your defensive line, your outside linebackers, and you have your hybrid, and he counts as one guy for both.
He's really kind of a hybrid, yeah. So if you count him among the defensive line, you have him, and then you have Tart. And then I think PV, and then I think Naquan. I think Naquan would be the next guy, but I think Shelvin Max in there.
Yeah.
But Naquan could play more of the 3-tag too. So that's the thing. Shelvin Max is a pure nose tackle, and you don't need that many nose tackles.
Do you think the team would value Naquan Jones or Malik Willis more? If it came down like you're picking the final 53, would you rather have 3 quarterbacks, 7 wide receivers, or 4 defensive linemen, including Autry in that, or 5, I guess, if you include Autry in that?
I think, I don't know. I guess I would probably say Malik Willis, just because I think you could find another, defensive tackle to plug in if you had to into a rotation. It's a lot harder to find another third quarterback if you feel like you need to keep 3, or another guy that could have real trade value, because you're not going to be able to trade Naquan Jones for anything next year. But Malik Willis, if he shows in preseason and looks pretty good, and maybe there's a team out there that liked his potential to begin with, he could have real trade value this time next year if Levis is going to be the guy. So I'd probably still go Willis.
All right. I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier with the last segment for the football show portion of the thing. Are you a big fan of horror movies?
Kind of. I'm not a huge.
Do you know the term "final girl"?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's for those that may not know. That's the person who survives the slasher. So Jamie Lee Curtis is considered the final girl. Sid from Scream, she's considered the final girl. So who among the wide receivers is going to be the final girl, Mike? Who's going to survive the bloodbath? Because we've already saw Jacob Copeland go down. They opted to bring in a wide receiver, they opted to bring in a center whose name escapes me, like Jimmy something, Jim Bob. We'll call him Jimmy.
He's not going to make the team, so.
But they decided to get rid of Jacob Copeland, who they loved. Jacob Copeland. I'm a little surprised that is the wide receiver or the position that they cut from, because they loved him in the pre-draft process. We talked about it last week. They gave him a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I'm a little shocked that Jacob Copeland was the one that was shown the door, especially with the return, situation still up in the air. So here's who I have as locks. And so this is going to be 6 people. So do you think
I definitely don't have 6 locks. I'll tell you that.
You don't have 6 locks?
No.
Okay, so
not at wide receiver.
Wow, really? I'm interested to hear this. So I think you may agree with Tyler, I would assume, of Tic Tac Titans. But I say that it's obviously DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, Kyle Phillips, there's 3.
Yeah.
Chris Moore, there's 4. and number 5 is NWI. So
Yeah.
there's 5. Wait a minute. Did I say I had 6 locks? Can I just not
You said
fucking
6
count?
locks.
I just can't fucking
Oh,
count.
okay.
Okay, sorry. So those are the 5 locks. So who is going to be the 6th wide receiver? There are some people, Tyler, so maybe you don't agree with Tyler, he thinks that NWI isn't a lock. There's actually a couple accounts out there. But he's the one that
I
because I
don't
think
think he's a complete lock.
you don't think he's a complete
No.
lock? NWI is not a complete lock on this team.
I don't think so. No.
Wow.
I think he was before DeAndre Hopkins, but I think now that's really in doubt because I think Chris Moore can play multiple positions for them, and I think Chris Moore's better than NWI as a receiver. Now I think there's some question as to whether or not maybe you could keep him around and have him do the special team stuff and all that. Like I still think if I had to pick a favorite among the guys behind Chris Moore, I would probably pick NWI as my favorite, as the most likely to make the roster, but I don't know that I have 100% lock on him.
Wow. I'm pretty surprised by that. Now, Stoney agrees with you. He goes, I don't think so either. He has a conspiracy theory that they only brought NWI back as veteran insurance in case the Hopkins deal didn't work out. So your 4 are the same top 4 that I got.
Yeah.
Because they love Chris Moore. They're gushing about him. So I guess that
if
Chris Moore is there, maybe they don't need NWI. Okay, so let's say NWI gets cut, which would be super surprising to me, but not so surprising to you. So maybe I'm in the minority. Maybe because it's you, Tyler. I think A to Z was kind of posing this question too. So maybe I'm in the minority on this one. But NWI is cut. Obviously, you're still going to carry 6, right? Do you if NWI doesn't make it, you still think they carry 6? So that leaves 4. That leaves 2 positions. Is it Reggie Roberson, my guy, and Colton Dow? Who are the other 2 if NWI is not one of them?
That would be my 2 right now. Now, I will say Trayshawn Harrison, the UDFA out of Oregon State, and Gavin Holmes, the UDFA out of Baylor. Both of those guys impressed me when I was out there. And I've heard good things about them on the days since I've been out there as well. So I think those are kind of your guys that are in the mix. And Mason Kinsey's still around. I don't think he's going to make the 53. And I honestly think at this point they need to be done with him. If he can't make the 53 in his 4th year, it's time to move on. Yeah, it's time to move on. And I have nothing against the guy. It's just if you're not good enough to make your 53-man roster by the time you're age 26 or 27, whatever he is now, you're not gonna. The peak has been hit. There's nothing more to squeeze out of Mason Kinsey. Whereas there could be out of some of these other guys. I also think Kyrus Jackson has had moments in camp that have looked pretty good. So I actually do like this UDFA wide receiver group.
It's funny how DeAndre Hopkins changes everybody's tone about the wide receiver group. Like the wide receiver group is like, oh, this thing sucks. And now DeAndre Hopkins here is like, man, you sure do got a lot of people to choose from to cut.
Yeah.
And now NWI is not even making it, that poor guy. But listen, I will say this. If you're cutting one of NWI and Chris Moore, you cut NWI because you get, I think, just over $1 million back. And that's $200,000 more than what you would get back from Chris Moore if you cut him. I'm really hoping Reggie Roberson shows out in the preseason because last year he only really showed up in one game, but he's really hampered by some really shitty quarterbacks. So I'm hoping
he was coming back from an injury too, right?
Yeah, the chemistry he built. I think he suffered one, but I think he suffered it with Chicago though. He is building a really great chemistry with Will Levis, which hopefully will translate. I really love what Reggie brings. He's entirely different from all the other wide receivers you have. Like there's a lot of little overlap between everybody else. Like Reggie Roberson is like kind of like your Khalif Raymond guy, like your deep threat, and that's really all he's good for. And maybe he's good for a little bit more, and I'm downplaying his skill set. But I'm with you on Mason Kinsey. Okay. It's his 4th year. I think the Titans are doing a disservice by keeping him on the roster. Let him go somewhere else. Don't put him on your practice squad. Don't make him suffer through another summer. Go somewhere else and put Kyrus Jackson and Trayshawn Harrison, if they don't make the roster, on your practice squad. Give someone else a chance to change your mind because Mason Kinsey obviously is not going to change your mind about his ability.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time. It's time for them. They've got to find someone who has more upside than Kinsey at this point. And they should have some guys like that. I mean, I really think, what we've seen from some of these young guys, that are the rookies, especially, and Roberson, it's enough for me to think that, like, yeah, you need to keep them around just to see what you can develop out of them, because they all have higher ceilings than what I think Mason Kinsey does at this point. So I think that's where they go, but I think it ultimately comes down to, if you're going to keep Colton Dowell, is Colton Dowell the new NWI? Like, for this season, with hopefully a higher ceiling, obviously, but can Colton Dowell give you what NWI brings to the table, in that you think he can play multiple positions as a backup, as receiver, and he can be your gunner on special teams and do some of the stuff that NWI did there? If Colton Dowell can do that, I think that makes NWI somewhat expendable. And I definitely don't think, like, I think Racing McMath's probably done here. I think that experiment's probably over as well. But I think it comes down to, like, Roberson, Dowell, and then, like, Harrison and Holmes, to me, would be the four. And I might throw Kears Jackson in there. I think it's still probably too early to write him off, but because he's shown some stuff too. But those would be my top four at the moment, for those last two spots, if you don't keep NWI.
Okay. Before we transition to football and other F words, or a football show after hours, whatever you want to call it, we're gonna keep up with this. Okay. We're going to keep up with, I got 2 weeks before the preseason game. We'll do one heading into the preseason game, one after the preseason game, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Who's your wide receiver 5 and who's your wide receiver 6? Right now.
Actually, give me NWI and Roberson.
Okay, well, we're the same. So this will be interesting. We're the same right now. That will do it for a football show portion of this podcast. Sinkers Beverages, the Build KG, the Kingston Group. If you want to stick around live, this is the time to stick around. We are going to talk about what Zach just said in the comments. And then, or if you're just a football show listener, head over to Football and Other F Words and make sure that you listen to this. And then you can just scroll past everything you just heard, head over to the hour and 4 mark, and we'll be right there for you guys over at Football and Other F Words. Bluegrass, Sinkers Beverages, the Kingston Group, of the Sinkers Beverages and the Kingston Group bring you a football show every Monday, every Thursday. 2 great sponsors, locally owned, locally operated. Make sure to do that. For Mike Herndon, for myself, this has been a football show. And that'll make it easy for Braden. And here we are. Welcome to Football and Other F Words After Hours. We're going to be talking about now. You thought we wouldn't talk about it, or maybe you thought we forgot. But my God, the Indianapolis Colts are a disaster. It was already alluded to in the comments by Zach Whitner. Are Orcas more valuable than running backs in the NFL? Because Jim Irsay definitely thinks so. He's willing to pay $20 million. $20 million to help an orca find the ocean in fucking Miami. Like, just throw that thing over, just take a crane and just move it. I mean, it's just, the ocean is fucking right there. But he's willing to donate $20 million to that, but will not do anything for his star running back, Jonathan Taylor. What are your thoughts on this, Mike? I mean, how insane is it that this this owner is going to do that?
Jim Irsay is absolutely unhinged at this point. And, like, I mean, I thought it was crazy last year when he basically, he stepped in and he forced the Matt Ryan benching on Frank Reich, and then he fires Frank Reich. And then he allows he hires Jeff Saturday, who's had a losing record as a high school coach in his only coaching experience. brings him in, and then allows him to put Matt Ryan back in before making him bench him again. And now, like, this whole thing with Jonathan Taylor, and now we got Orcas involved. Like, it's unbelievable what a clown show. Like, Dan Snyder is out of the NFL, and, like, Jim Irsay is firmly sticking his foot in the door of that, hey, crazy, awful owner position, because he is, like, all over the place right now, and I just don't understand what the hell is he doing.
He's looking for Sarah Palin on OnlyFans to get those feet pictures, apparently, according to his Twitter. He's really obsessed with them.
Oh, the 2011 tweets from Jim Irsay that are being recirculated now because people have just gone back and found crazy shit he's talked about have been unbelievable. I mean, some of them are just insane.
I'm at this point, though, where I'm with you. I said it on Monday. It's like when you're in a friend group, right? And someone leaves the friend group, that creates a vacuum. And someone has to be the punching bag in a guy friend group. I don't know if it's like that for women, but it is for men. There's always like a punching bag where you kind of all make fun of the same guy. Maybe sometimes a little too much, but if he leaves, someone else becomes that guy. That is what Jim Irsay is, or Dan Snyder was to Jim Irsay. Dan Snyder leaves the fellowship of NFL owners, and here comes Jim Irsay as the guy. I cannot think right now off the top of my head of a owner that is in the situation that Jim Irsay has created for himself. I mean, even Jerry Jones knows when to shut up. It does not seem like Jim Irsay is he's getting a little too big for his britches.
I mean, Mark Davis can't get a passable haircut, but he at least knows when to be quiet about his running back situation. Like, he's not out there,
they're out there
actively tweeting about.
Yeah, they're even saying that he probably doesn't even know how to work Twitter, but they're putting out right now that they're still trying to hope to get negotiations done with Josh Jacobs.
Jacobs, yeah.
Jim Irsay's just like, fuck no, I don't want to fucking do this.
Yeah, and let me say this too. Like, I do think losing Jonathan Taylor hurts the Colts quite a bit, especially since, like, I think that wasn't the whole plan. The whole thing everyone talked about was, well, it's going to really help Anthony Richardson that Jonathan Taylor's there and can take some of the pressure off of him, and they're at least going to be able to run the ball really well and bring him along slowly. Well, that shit's all gone out the window because I mean, look, Evan Hull is interesting. But he's not Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, he's good, but I mean, I don't think he's ready to carry a major workload while Zach Moss is missing time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Now Zach Moss is hurt, and Zach Moss was so pedestrian anyway. Zach Moss was basically Hassan Haskins without the domestic violence or whatever. But I think it's a disaster for the Colts that this has fallen apart the way it is. And look, it also makes them look bad.
It makes them look so stupid.
Free agents. I mean, good luck selling free agents on coming there when, and Zach Kiefer profiled like all the Colts, all these Colts players that have wanted out and have asked to get out over the past 9 months. And it's like, Naheem Hines and some of these other guys that are actively trying to get away from the team and talking about how great it is once they get off that team. It's a like low key dumpster fire, and it's only low key because the national media for some reason is completely in love with the Colts everything and just cannot quit the Colts. But this team has been a joke for a while, and we've been all over it here on Football and Other F Words, making fun of them as they've evolved into the laughing stock of the AFC South, which is, I mean, what a turn of events that the Colts, after the Andrew Luck era and the Peyton Manning era and all that, they are now the joke franchise. I mean, they're even a bigger joke than the Texans right now. I mean,
well, it shows that their dysfunction was greatly masked by generational talent of quarterbacks.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Irsay wasn't some visionary owner. They fell ass backwards into Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, and that buoyed their franchise for 20 years or 30 years.
Tony Dungy had put out a tweet. I always forget that he's on Twitter, and I don't follow him. But he was talking about Edgerrin James And that contract situation, and because someone had said, here it is. Pro Football Talk says the chew them up, spit them out approach to running backs is unfortunate, but not new. In 2006, by the way, could you not find a more recent example than 2006? The Colts let Edgerrin James walk away after a franchise tag 1,500-yard season. They drafted Joseph Adai to replace him, and they won the Super Bowl that same year. And Tony Dungy replies, I'm not disagreeing with Mike. I wouldn't call it chew/spit, just standard money management procedure. 7 years before that, the Colts replaced 3 times Pro Bowl running back Marshall Faulk with less expensive rookie Edgerrin James. Happens at all positions except quarterback. And by the way, it took like several people. It took Joseph Adai and someone else to take over the Edgerrin James stuff. It's just not like, oh, they had Joseph Adai and then they go to the Super Bowl. They've been due for a Super Bowl. They were underperforming, and it wasn't because of Edgerrin James, because their defense wasn't really that great. It was because their offensive line had some issues here and there. It wasn't because, they drafted Joseph Adai and a rookie running back. That must mean that that's the reason why they won. No, it just how it happens in the NFL. There is no correlation between Joseph Adai being on your team and Super Bowl wins.
Yeah, Joseph Adai was fine. Like, he was fine, but yeah, definitely not the reason. But yeah, I think it's, the whole running back thing and the whole discourse, I think is, I understand obviously that position doesn't typically age well, but I think you could still they're still valuable. Like, Jonathan Taylor still means something to the Colts. Like, when he's out, they're a less dangerous offense. And I think the same goes for Derrick Henry, even though, like, the Titans obviously did fine without Derrick Henry last season. I think partially or 2 seasons ago, but because they stumbled into Deontay Foreman, who I think was he's proven himself to be a starting level NFL back since he basically took off here, and then he had a great year with the Panthers last year. And now I'm pretty sure he's going to end up being the starter for the Bears. Would be my guess. So I think we are all hard on running backs, but when they're 25, 26 years old, you could certainly sign them to a reasonable 3-year deal that gives you some outs and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure Jonathan Taylor, maybe he's asking for $16 million a year, but like, couldn't you find a way to structure that without like making it cap crippling? I mean, you paid a guard $20 million a year, and Shaq Leonard, like,
I mean, Cole Kmet got a lot of money. It's like because the Rams were dumb giving a lot of money to Todd Gurley,
who had major injuries,
knee issues, right? Like, I mean, it was ridiculous. Now everybody's gun shy, and then a couple of years later, Ezekiel Elliott gets a lot of money when he probably really didn't deserve that. When you look at metrics, I think there's a way to balance the stats, the metrics, and the money. They just have to be willing to do it instead of going with this excuse making and blaming the CBA when the CBA is not the problem. The problem is that you just don't want to pay. The CBA does not dictate how much you can pay to a certain player at a certain position. You just have to want to do it. Speaking of numbers, and we'll end on this because I have this question I want to pose to you. I'm big in Caleb Farley, year 3. He's got the number 3, big into numerology.
Yeah.
This is from Titan Matt, at Titan Matt _. The sum of their numbers is 49. He's talking about Derrick Henry, DeAndre Hopkins, and Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill broke Steve McNair's record for most consecutive starts when he started his 49th straight game last season. So 49 and 49. So some of their jersey numbers is 49. He did 49 straight games until he got injured, which broke Steve McNair's record. Steve McNair was number 9. 49 plus 9 equals 58. This year is Super Bowl 58. The Tennessee Titans are winning the Super Bowl. Your thoughts?
I mean, let's go. Let's do it. I don't see why not. It's the math adds up. Yeah, let's go. We already booked our. It's in Vegas too, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So have we already booked our hotels and flights and everything? I mean, we're gonna have to do a live show from Super Bowl Row, right?
Let's do it. Oh, I'll be finding a way to get to Super Bowl Row, even though I don't want to go to Vegas anymore because Vegas is a cesspool. It's totally overrated. It's like Tunica to me now. I don't want to go. It's like New Orleans. Don't want to go.
See, I
Over.
still enjoy Vegas. I
don't know. Like maybe if we go like and stay at the pool and do sports books and stuff, then yeah, I'm in. I think it's the other stuff that's all involved and spending money and staying inside at casinos. Like I guess maybe I need to change my perspective on how to approach Las Vegas.
Yeah, I really don't enjoy sitting at a blackjack table for like 5 hours anymore, like I did when I was in my early 20s. But I will say I like to go and do the shows and like do good food. Like they have really good restaurants there and stuff like that. So as a food and entertainment person now, not so much a party person.
Yeah.
I found a different way to enjoy Vegas. But yeah, I still like it.
Zach Whitener says his goal is to have one of his tweets read on the show one day. Well, hopefully you've had one read before, because right now there are no tweets anymore. So you'll never have one read.
And I'll also say that most of the time, if you're having your tweet read on the show, it's not a good thing. We're usually making fun of it.
Yeah, it's an X now, and now it's not retweets anymore. We have the official terminology of a repost, and a quote post that goes.
I refuse to go along with the
doesn't matter. You're going to look like the foolish one, because in 10 years, nobody's going to know what the fuck you're talking about. What's a tweet, granddad? That's going to be your
Twitter/X will be out of business before 10 years from now.
The last thing, Jamarco Jones. We didn't talk about this in our Hogmolly talk earlier.
Yeah.
But Jamarco Jones, oh my, this guy cannot stay in practice because I doesn't seem like he's doing a dirty hit from the way that TD described it, but it is a dirty hit in the sense that they don't want to practice that hard. You're supposed to protect your teammates. I guess I should say it's not an illegal hit. It just may be an excessive force hit. He's been kicked out now of his third practice, 2 practices this year, 1 practice last year. People forget that like one of his first days, he was fighting with Taylor Lewan. They got into a fight. We know that Mike Vrabel has said on Bus with the Boys that he loves fire. He loves some scrappy mentality. But I think this is going too far. How much leeway does Jamarco Jones get, considering the public support that Mike Vrabel's put behind him in 2 years, talking about their history and what he brings to the table, considering their depth as well? Because if they cut Jamarco Jones, they do save $2 million in cap savings, but they're in kind of a bind, a mess of their own, a mess they're partially responsible for, and a mess that MPF has created as well. So at what point is too much for Jamarco Jones, and you think that Jamarco Jones isn't going to be on this team anymore?
I think he's going to end up having to be on the team. And I mean, obviously, if he gets in a fight for 10 more consecutive practices, eventually
is 10 the level? I mean, like how many fights does he have left?
Yeah, maybe 4, more. I think
4
spread
more
throughout training camp. Now, if he does like 2 or 3 in a week, maybe that's the limit. But the crazy thing is, he had the fight with Lewan last year, which was the thing where it's like, why are you fighting someone in your own position group? So obviously Jamarco Jones has some sort of anger management issue, which can sometimes be a good thing for an offensive lineman. But you'd like to see him take it out on, in a healthy way, in a legal way.
Jake Nelson at the beginning of the show said, #get Jamarco a therapist 2023, #give peace a chance, Jamarco.
I mean, look, they don't have a whole lot of options, right? Like our boy John Ojukwu, unfortunately, like the Ojukwu awakening seems to have died down a little bit. Like he's not been rotating with the top groups. Since.
It got reported today. Someone had put, I'm assuming this is Jim Wyatt, for the remainder of the practice, Jones, who had been the second team right tackle on Thursday, was held out of team drills with Nicholas Petit-Ferrer stepping into the second unit and John Ojukwu taking the third team reps, which sounds like Chris Hubbard today was getting the main reps, unless it was Jalen Duncan, because they didn't really specify who it was. But one of those guys were getting the first team reps. So then Ojukwu got the third team reps, didn't even get the second unit reps. Like, he did not get bumped up. It looks like he stayed status quo. I mean, at some point, though, that stuff bleeds into a game, right? Does Jamarco Jones turn off the killer instinct for a game? I mean, can you risk putting him out there?
You definitely think he'd turn it up, right? And I mean, I guess it depends. Like, I mean, he's played in NFL games before, and I don't remember him necessarily being like a flag magnet when he was in Seattle. So I don't know. Maybe it's something that it's just hot and it's just training camp, and this is just something that he doesn't deal with well for whatever reason. And he has a different mindset once it, or maybe they're mean to him in the locker room. I don't know. Maybe he gets picked on or something like that. Who knows?
Maybe.
But it's definitely an odd thing that he keeps getting kicked out of practice and fighting with different people and stuff like that. And it obviously needs to stop because he sadly is probably their best option at right tackle. I mean, it's definitely him or Hubbard. If you're just trying to get by for 6 games, I maybe Duncan and Ojukwu have more upside long term, but you also have to suffer the rookie growing pains if you're going to stick them out there for those first 6 weeks, and then you're going to end up probably going back to NPF anyway, so you're not going to necessarily get the good part of the rookie development this year.
Do you keep both Hubbard and Jamarco Jones in your opinion?
Probably.
Okay, so you do think, because I was going to say, because if you had to choose one, aren't you going to choose the guy that's not getting into fights and costs you less?
Probably. I mean, I think both of them can play inside too. Like, they both have guard versatility and have played guard at the NFL level before. So, and to me, those are probably 2 guys you keep. I think because really you're going to keep at least 9, if not 10 offensive linemen to start, and NPF won't count against the 53. So you're going to keep your starting 5 whoever you want to plug in between Jones or Hubbard there. And then let's say it's Jones. And then you've got Hubbard, Levin. I mean, right? Like, after that, Jalen Duncan probably makes a team. And then maybe Ojukwu and Roos as your 10. If you keep 10. So I think they both probably do end up making the team.
Interesting. Okay. I think the guy that's going to prove me wrong the most in this season is blank.
This is going to prove you wrong or me wrong?
You. That's me framing the question for you to say, oh, well, the guy that I think is going to prove me wrong, but it's you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think Christian Fulton's going to prove you the most wrong.
That was my choice. I said that on Monday. It seems like that was going to be mine. So, like, mine would be Christian Fulton. He's going to prove me wrong. But I don't know if that's a good thing long-term for the Titans because it's in a contract year. But he'll prove me wrong in the sense that what he did away from the team mattered more than being with the team. So he'll prove me wrong in that regard. I feel like maybe he'll stay healthy. He had a little hamstring scare the other day. And I'm not rooting for him to get injured. I don't want to make it sound like I'm rooting for him to get injured. But I think that Christian Fulton will prove me wrong on stuff that I've said about him that doesn't really pertain to what he's done on the field, because I've always thought that he's been a very good player when he's healthy and on the field.
To me, my answer will be Chig. I think Chig will prove me the most wrong. And not that I haven't been in on Chig for a while now, but when Chig was drafted, I very much thought Chig was only going to be like a rotational backup kind of tight end. I did not think he could handle like a tight end 1 kind of workload. And obviously that is what he's going to be for this team. Like, there's no doubt about that. So I think he's going to prove me the most wrong as far as like what my thoughts were of him coming into the team.
Yeah, I think my concern, because Pretty Boy Lipschitz puts on there, and Harold Landry's not going to prove me wrong. He hasn't proved me wrong yet in all of his seasons. But Pretty Boy Lipschitz brings up a good point here. Is there any chance we re-sign Fulton? And that's been my issue with the idea that if he plays really well, he's playing really well in a contract year, he's extra motivated. How does he stay motivated if he were to get a second contract? It's very scary to sign a guy like that. But you also want to keep a guy it's a delicate balancing act, but he's really going to have to put on a damn show for me to feel very comfortable. He's going to have to be better than what he was in 2021. In 2021, he was excellent.
If Fulton is let's just say, in PFF grades aren't everything, but let's say PFF has Fulton as one of the top, say, 15 corners in the NFL. Are you re-signing him?
Whew, I don't know, man. The cornerback market's just so it's kind of getting to where the wide receiver market is, but it also is a guy that's been kind of injured. It's kind of like a David Long, right? Like David Long was the guy that everybody thought was going to get paid big bucks, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Titans are worse without David Long, and I don't think they should have re-signed him. But if Christian Fulton stays healthy, and it is, let's say that he only misses 2 games, and they're 2 games in the middle of the season, that like season-ending games, and he plays really well, and he's what he was, top 15, I think I'd be open to re-signing him on a modest contract that he'd probably get on the market.
Yeah, I would. I feel like I would feel the same way. Like if he plays at a really high level, because the thing is, I don't think there's another outside corner on this team currently that you could say is like a 1 potentially besides him. Like because you've got McCreary, who I think they want to play him inside. It seems that seems to be where that's headed. Sean Murphy-Bunting is on a 1-year deal. I think he's going to be fine. I think he'll be a help to this team. I don't think he's a 1, and I don't think he has the potential to be a 1. Farley, I mean, if Farley was ever healthy, but like obviously you can't count on that at this point. So I think Fulton's really the only one with that potential, and so unless you're going to go out and spend big money or draft one really high, and obviously you have other needs that you're still going to need to fill between offensive line and any number of other positions where they could use some additional support. I think you're going to probably need to replace Denico Autry. There's plenty of spots where they could use a high draft pick.
What is this dog doing? Is this dog barking or coughing? Is it dying?
He's coughing. He's driving me nuts with this. But yeah, that's Louie. He's getting old, and he's got like this old man wheeze that he does. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think Fulton will be tough to replace if they don't re-sign him. If he plays well, right? And he's got to play well, and he's got to probably play 17 games. Like if he missed 1 or 2 games, I guess maybe you could let it slide, but he can't be missing 3 or 4 or 5 games and hope to be back, I don't think.
All right. That will do it for us. We covered a lot. The little extra bonus for those that listen to Football and Other F Words. You may be a little startled at the beginning of the show because I'm not going to go back and change the intro music. It's just going to be whatever football show is. I'm going to make it easy on me. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, a special episode of a Football and Other F Words show. Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL on X. I am on X at FWordsPod. I'm going to change these little logos down here, too.
Oh, yeah. You've got the little birds on there.
Yeah, I got the birds still on there, and I got to shoot those birds down. But follow us on X. Repost our stuff. We greatly appreciate it. On paulkarski.com, a piece about Arden Key. The offensive line is the big talk of the week over at stackingtheinbox.com. Film Friday's coming up, depending on when you listen to it. But every Friday, Stoney Keeley has a piece out. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a film piece, but Stoney Keeley writes every Friday over at stackingtheinbox.com. Subscribe to both those. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at 440 Sports. Make sure to turn notifications on because we're going to have some great stuff coming on the YouTube channel this year. For Mike Herndon, I'm Zach Lyons. This has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.